Welcome to Socializing Security, where every week we have a discussion about security, compliance, and beyond.
Our goal is to learn and grow by socializing each week's topic with each other, our guests, and with you.
A quick compliance note, this podcast is meant for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal or regulatory advice.
We're glad you've joined us, and we hope you'll learn along with us.
And we're back with another episode of Socializing Security, and we're coming off of what have been some of my favorite episodes to edit so far that we've done at the podcast. We just released our special edition of Is the Fight for Privacy Dead or Is It Alive? And we had a look back retrospective episode with all of our amazing social network guest speakers that we had on and got to listen to their perspectives, which I think you and I have talked about in the look back episode is, I think, one of your favorite takeaways, right, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, to see the same question answered over and over and over again. Obviously, we hear it every week as we record and multiple times, sometimes when we edit. To hear them kind of back to back and see the progression between different people was really, really cool. And definitely has me thinking a lot more. That might be one of the most thought-provoking parts of each episode for me is how should I be thinking about this? And should I be giving up on that fight or not? And if I'm not, then what should we be doing? So definitely has put a lot of thought in my head, I know, and I think for the same for you too.
Yeah. I think it's been something, we're recording this at the beginning of 2025, just so that we're kind of staying relevant here of where we're at in a moment in time. And I said this on part 2 of the special edition episode as well, but privacy occasionally has a moment. And it happens sometimes when we have a really big data breach or a change in regulation, a change in administration. And I am currently seeing that privacy is having a moment again. So that is what originally inspired this conversation. And I was feeling this at the beginning of the new year and was feeling like, hey, I think it's going to be time for us to focus on privacy again. We've done a lot of episodes on security and compliance. And I think we had 1 or 2 episodes on privacy, but we really didn't get a chance to dive in. And I think this year will be different just because of what we're seeing in the news and what people are talking about. Personally, I'm having way more conversations about personal security and personal privacy with my neighbors and my family members. I was really excited to announce on our look back episode that my family chat made it to Signal. And I've actually been pushing my entire close community into Signal. And so slowly I've been doing grassroots efforts of being like, hey, if you really want to reach me about certain things, obviously not like, hey, I'm getting lunch here, like whatever. But like if my friends want to chat with me about maybe more sensitive topics, I'm just like, hey, could we do this in Signal? Or like, hey, call me in Signal, whatever. And it's something that I'm doing. And it's kind of the theme for our episode today, where we're really talking about incognito mode and how to do that in a small way. You and I are not the type of people that are like, come in, show up, like zero trust, right, isn't built in a day. It's zero trust models when we've done this effectively. It's slow incremental change. It's something we've talked about on many episodes. So today we're hoping to talk about that.
Yeah. I've also, when I discovered Signal, I pretty quickly pivoted my wife and kids. All of our communications amongst ourselves and subsets of ourselves is on Signal at this point. I haven't quite gotten brave enough to push other people yet. It's one of those that are challenging because it means another app on their phone. And what I found with some friends is that when they do have Signal and they don't use it as their primary messaging application, sometimes messages get a little bit missed. And that can be challenging. It's a little bit challenging in that regard if they don't adopt it at the same level that you do. So yeah, definitely interested to hear maybe a little bit more about how you've pushed that through and gotten people hooked on it. I definitely have groups of friends that are on it for sure. Would like to get more moved over to it for sure.
It's difficult because even I struggle. Like I'll be quickly trying to like call my dad to do something where he's helping me around the house or something. And then I'm like, is it phone? Is it Signal? And then I'm like, right now, everything is in Signal. And unless Signal's really inconvenient or it's like dropping the call, whatever, for whatever reason, like then I'll move back to just like a phone call. It's no big deal. I also like if my parents are calling me on FaceTime or something, then I'll just be like, hey, I'm going to call you back on Signal. And I just hang up and call them back. It's slow incremental organizational change that I'm pushing for the people that I might share like more sensitive information with than others, right? Like if it's like my dentist and like he's confirming an appointment, I'm not going to be like, you can only reach me on Signal, right? What the way I was pushing it with, and I don't know if pushing is the right word, but the way that I was talking about it, for me, it's been boundary setting. I am very lucky. I have some really great friends in the security, privacy, compliance space, and many of them have been using Signal for years. I've been in Signal for years. But it was usually the place where, I would, like, my friend would be like, hey, if you really want the best place to reach me, right, is in Signal. And so that would be a boundary that they would set. And sometimes, whatever, I would iMessage them and they would still respond. But generally they would be like, catch me in Signal. And I remember being at first like a little bit like, whoa, like that's intense.
Yeah.
And then the way I've kind of been talking to it about my friends and family is I've been like, encryption in this particular use case really matters. I do still believe that there are certain instances where technology companies might need access to certain data. For what I'm talking about with my friends and family, don't think that they need access to. We definitely need to have conversations about CSAM on another episode. I know
Yes.
exactly who I'd like to talk to about it, and she's an expert in the field and we need to bring her on ASAP. But when we're talking about just the day-to-day communications, for me, I basically was pitching it to friends being like, hey, a lot of my privacy and security friends have been using this for years. And just with everything that's going on, I just, for my comfort level, would just kind of prefer if we just chat and Signal.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like when the conversation needs to be private is the best time to pitch it, to bring it up, to say, listen, have you seen the world out there recently? You may want to, and sometimes that opens up that conversation for like, yeah, somebody at Meta is looking at everything you send. There's no 100% privacy there, and then talk about how you go about making those judgments. Like Meta is a company that's built on farming your information. Period. End of story. They're going to find a way to do it. They're not going to tell you, and you may not see the direct effects of it, but there are downstream effects you may not like. Whereas a company like Signal has, it's a foundation rather than a company. Now, there's a company associated with it, of course, but it's designed to create something independent, and it's free. I personally support it because like I would any other community effort I think is worthwhile. And, there are some that
Can you explain what that means to just some of our non-technical folks? Because I think this is relatively unique.
Yeah.
I think we're all used to Wikipedia doing it, right? I think that's maybe a clearer example for everyone, especially if they're not familiar with Signal. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So in the tech space, when you create a foundation, the idea is that we want to maintain this as independent. They're almost in the United States, they're usually nonprofit, so 501c3 type of a company, where they're specifically organized in a way where taxes are minimalized. They're out there not to make a profit, not to make money, but to sustain something. And so, yes, Wikipedia is a great example that most people know about it.
You got the pop-ups, right? You're used to
Almost
early internet, just like pop up, being like, please give us $1, give us $5.
Yep. And if you've ever
Grassroots campaign.
Yeah. And if you've ever been to the Wayback Machine, looking for something that got deleted off the internet, and that folds into the privacy conversation way better than I ever thought, is a similar situation. Like they're doing a community service type of thing, and they want to make sure that it stays independent. It can't be manipulated, less likely for it to be corrupted by business capitalist type interests, to make sure that it's there for everybody to use and feel safe using.
Yeah.
To that effect, nothing is perfect. There's recently been a report about Russian intelligence being able to manipulate the Ukraine soldiers into being able to see some of their messages. Now, it's complex and very, very targeted. It's not a flaw necessarily in the way that Signal works, but in some of the convenience factors. So again, convenience, unfortunately, sometimes makes privacy less. So for people like me, I don't look at Signal as a replacement for texting. It's a messaging app. You mentioned iMessage and FaceTime. Like combine those two together is kind of what Signal is for those that aren't familiar with it. It's a one-to-one, one-to-many chat type functionality, as well as the ability to do voice and video calls. And by connecting my phone and my computer together, I can have all that same functionality on either device. So, when Milou and I want to have a conversation without, jumping into a Zoom and on all those other type of platforms, we just use Signal. chat back and forth on Signal with text. And then when we want to talk in person, we do a video call. It's super easy to do, and I prefer to do it on my computer if I'm sitting at my desk already. So why not do it there? But I can also do it from my phone. My daughter's abroad right now, and when she calls, often she's calling via Signal because it is, as long as she's got a good data connection, which isn't always the case,
Yeah.
she's able to do that securely and without having to worry about which SIM card that she's using in her phone.
Yeah, it's similar to previously Skype,
Hmm.
a while ago now, years ago. If you were in more of an international type job or you traveled a lot, you were using Skype, right? Wi-Fi calling wasn't really a thing at the time. And so Skype became this large organization, right? Because they were one of the first to offer this voice over internet protocol, VoIP, like
Yeah.
Wi-Fi calling, that made suddenly that you didn't have to use your data and you didn't have to spend like call collect, right? That's where this started. Signal is a unique one because it's so good from an encryption and security perspective that it's also bad. So
Yeah.
I want to make sure that 100% corporate love note for Signal, we love them, but also we do recognize that Signal, because of the way that it's set up, could also be used for nefarious intent. And that's why, again, there's certain things where there's certain particular types of groups of people, specifically vulnerable types of individuals, such as children, who we should really be mindful of when we're recommending tools and thinking through what are the protections in place for them. That's a separate episode because this is one we've been talking about for a while. And I think
Yeah.
we're getting to the point that I'm finally ready to phone a friend and ask for this expert
heavy
to come
topic.
join. It is. I did just want to bring up one point because you just laid out the nonprofit and the grassroots type effort so well. And I think I just wanted to belabor it to one point that for those of you that are following like technology news within relative recency, right? In like late 2024, OpenAI, the developers of ChatGPT, were in the news because they basically had a schism of mission and values and basically decided that they no longer wanted to be like a nonprofit, like a mission-driven technology company, and they really wanted to be for-profit. And I think we've discussed this on previous episodes. Otherwise, you and I definitely talked about it happened. It's ringing bells for me,
Yeah.
but it's just for those of you that are listening to the technology news and you might have thought like, I'm not totally sure what's going on with Sam Altman and OpenAI and ChatGPT. There was basically like a foundation shift, right? The company that was built to create generative AI and do it in like a mission-driven way basically decided they don't necessarily want to do that anymore for profit. And whatever the reasons are for that, that's not on us to speculate. We don't know. We weren't there. We weren't in the room. But it's just wanted to bring back the point because, again, these types of mission-driven or like grassroots types campaigns, I'm trying to say it in a different word that's not just like open source because I don't think that
No,
our
that's-
audience would necessarily know what that is.
And it's not entirely accurate in this case either with Signal specifically.
Yeah,
Though
because it's not.
their code is open.
But I will say I've been playing around with the group chats in Signal, and because I'm starting a book club. So in my personal life, I'm starting a low stakes book club for close friends of mine that are kind of all over and we're spread out. So it's actually great for us. But also if we want to read books that are like romance novels or whatever, I don't necessarily need that business in like a Facebook group, And so we had originally been like, what's the right place? And I was like, hey, in case there's spicy content or whatever in this book that I'm going to read, whether it's about, emotional intelligence or like, I don't even know. I feel like I'm not ready to share my book, my reading content on the internet as
That's
my
fair.
privacy. But, thinking through, I was like, hey, I'm creating this group and it's going to be in Signal. And so it was basically like totally optional if you want to join. If you want to join, the group chat is in Signal, and we're still doing Google Meet. I'm not pushing everything towards Signal. Maybe eventually we'll do everything in Signal, but for right now, I'm just testing it out. But part of me is excited about it because I'm figuring out how to be a really effective admin in Signal, which means I think we're finally getting ready to open a Socializing Security Signal group chat, which we've been talking for a year about.
Yeah.
And now that I understand how the administrator rights work and I've been able to tinker with it, I actually think it could be really cool for us to engage with the audience in a private way.
Yeah, and help encourage other people to use it more too. For me, that move to Signal has also like it tears down some of those walled gardens in a lot of ways too. So you mentioned iMessage. I'm one of those dreaded green bubble people because I'm
My
using
husband
Android.
is too.
Yeah.
It's awful.
And so and that exact reaction is it right there. It's awful.
To be
I
fair, I'm actually reconsidering now. So
I'm always reconsidering. I'm always consider other platforms. Never get too married to one ecosystem is
I'm
my
so
theory.
married to that one, but I am reevaluating.
It's one of the reasons I didn't join that other ecosystem is the lock-in aspect of it. But being able to tear down those types of walls. So it's like it's not one of those. It's like, for years people have been pushing Apple to open iMessage to be non-Apple devices, but they resist it constantly. It's even getting to the point where there's legal aspects to it of people trying to force them. So
But they've been forced.
have they been forced?
Yes.
Okay. We'll see
Breaking
when they do it.
news. It's not that breaking news, but yes, you're in the most recent update. It's RTS is, I believe, the acronym. Yeah, legally pushed through from the EU. Basically, they can't do that
Oh,
anymore.
that's
They
right.
have to play nicely.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, in the most recent update, which it sounds like you don't have an iPhone. So, as an iPhone user, now if you're texting with iPhone users who have more updated iPhones, it depends on the ones that they are, because some of the older ones, like I think 13, for example, doesn't support it. But if you're texting now, basically you and I could send a video to one another without it getting super pixelated and teeny tiny
Yeah.
via text message.
Yeah. Yeah. MLS is not the greatest these days. And that's great to hear, and I applaud that because Apple is one of the top tier corporations I would trust from a privacy perspective. I'm not going to say I fully do because I would still much rather do a foundation that is more grassroots, that is more designed for, we want to create the most private communication channels you can get, and focusing on that and not having any question as to whether Apple or Meta or name any other big company is looking at those messages. So for me, it's a level of not having to worry about whether I should trust a big company or not. And knowing the architecture of Signal, which we're not going to get into because it gets really nerdy really fast. It is a pretty solid platform. This breach of that trust that I mentioned earlier between Russia and Ukraine ends up being one of those, they manipulated the people, not the technology. They used that ability for me to say, I want to link my Signal account that is on my phone with my computer so that they can work in unison as a single account, if you will. They took advantage of that capability, and it was more
What is that
social
called?
engineering.
Yeah, I was about to be like, it's called social engineering, but yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for beating me to the punch.
Yes, and so they didn't manipulate the tech. They used a feature of the technology for convenience, but they really, what the hack was, quote unquote hack, was the people aspect of it. So
Right.
again, to go back to, I don't really like people are the weakest link, but people are the easiest to hack because they're infinitely flexible.
People are easy to hack. And I think I'll pivot a little bit because I think one great combo on Signal. Again, if they want to come, they're always welcome. We've said this many times. I think I even posted that on my LinkedIn the other day. So what I would say is for incognito mode, I had a really great example recently of what it's like to actually do social networking in practice. Sorry, social engineering, also social networking, but it was also networking related. So that's probably why I got tripped up. But social engineering and what that actually means, because somebody was like, this feels like kind of like stalkerish, or this feels icky, or surveillance-ish. I don't know what the right word is, but that was kind of, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of what social engineering is. It's really taking advantage of some weakness in a system or a person and figuring out how to get it. And I have done this before on the ethical side, right? I used to basically test vendors for data center audits. So think about like where the internet lives. We've talked about so many episodes where I just had the pleasure of getting to just basically test vendors on social engineering in person. And again, we were under a confidentiality agreement. We had an agreement in place. This was completely like legal. If I say that, and I say that as an attorney, and again, not regulatory advice, you should not be trespassing. You definitely should not be stalking or anything like that. Consult your own lawyer. But I would say the social engineering aspect of it, where I was getting into a conversation about, what does that look like? And I'll give the example too. And Brian, you might have to ask me some questions about it so that I give tidbits of information. But basically, I kind of, I don't want to say snuck into an event. I went to dinner, but I was disinvited to an event the other day. And it was a cybersecurity event. And then I was just kind of like, I should just go to the event.
So just as simple as you knew where it was, you knew when it was, you just showed up and said, hey, I've got a reservation at the next table.
And I did have a reservation. Yeah, 100%. I had a reservation. But yeah, basically, I was invited to an event for cybersecurity leaders and was really excited about it. And then at the last minute, I got oh no, it's canceled. And I was like, that's so odd. Normally, if you go to a corporate event and they cancel, especially for weather, you usually get blasted via email because they don't want people to show up to an event if it's canceled.
Yeah.
Because that's not fun. Also, not fun for the event organizer, not fun for the restaurant, whatever, like, not fun.
No.
But the idea of if you have enough information about the event, it doesn't hurt to call to confirm that it's canceled, right? Because I was like, shoot, am I getting weird information from somebody because maybe this person isn't who they say they are, right? Who knows? Like, odd, but whatever. It felt odd. So to me, I was like, let me just call the restaurant and just see what's going on. And from there, you basically, I ended up at the restaurant with a reservation. I was able to see that the event was not canceled.
Yikes.
Luckily, I had an excellent dinner with lovely people next to me and was able to just like chat. But it also just shows you how small our community is.
Yeah.
Because I ended up sitting next to like a technology leader. And they were like, do you see that event over there? And then suddenly we were talking about that, and it just shows that our community is really small. Yeah. And be careful.
It could be easy to manipulate situations because even in a large community, you're generally not going to be more than 2 or 3 steps away from somebody else. And so being able to get information about somebody isn't that hard. Right. So I stumble across these things all the time because I'm not good with names and faces. So I oftentimes will Google people, I'll look them up on LinkedIn, things like that, just to try to cement it in my head a little bit better. And had a situation like that the other day of somebody completely outside of my day-to-day type stuff, but in another community that I'm a part of, and looked them up and was like, they went to this college that is also one of the colleges my daughters went to, and was like, that's an interesting hook that I could use. Now, I'm going to use it as a talking point next time I see them. Yeah. Well, but at the same time, I could use that to manipulate them somehow and do nefarious things.
I hate that word, but yeah.
And so and I somewhat made it kind of blunt like that because absolutely I could use this against them if I really wanted to.
But you don't.
But I won't. No, I'm not that kind of person.
He's not. I can vouch for him. Sorry for those of you that don't know what kind of person Brian is. I do, and he would not do that. In the same way that he knows that I also had no nefarious intent of just getting dinner at a nice restaurant.
For me, it's going to be an opportunity to make a deeper connection with somebody. That I'm an introvert. I don't make up things. I'm horrible at small talk. So this is going to become a small talk thing that will be meaningful for both of us to talk about. Because now I know this thing about them.
A little tidbit, a little fun fact.
Yeah. So just like anything you mentioned with Signal too, like it can be used for good. It can be used to protect our privacy, but it can also protect the privacy of people that are doing not good things. And so information is valuable to both the light side and the dark side. And that's something that we all need to be conscious of. We're on
the light side. I would just like to be very clear to those of you listening. We are on the light side or try our best. I feel like I'm still one click away from falling for the wrong thing, just in the same way that most of our listeners are. So I don't want to say just because I'm a cybersecurity expert that I'm not also, I could so easily be duped in this by people with positive or negative intent.
Yeah. And obviously we're here sharing these things. If we were using it negatively, we probably wouldn't be sharing this with the world.
Yeah, I don't think so.
These are not trade secrets for us. These are things that we're doing for the community.
This is just, honestly, I just ended up having a really great dinner with my husband at a restaurant, but I was pretty disappointed to see that I was disinvited to an event. Because that would make me be like, I don't think I want to work with those people or recommend them in the future,
Yeah. Well, and that's another whole conversation about burning bridges in small communities. Don't do that. That's a bad thing to do.
Don't do that. Don't do that. No. Also, just if you oversold the event, just be honest about it and be like, hey, we had so much demand. Still icky. You know what? This one's still icky. I don't want to justify it, but I had a really, really great, I had steak tartare and I had all these amazing things and I had a really great conversation with the couple next to me. So it was like a wonderful evening. And I think I was meant to be at that restaurant for whatever reason, but it did just remind me that somebody who looks like me has a very different experience of getting into or access to things than somebody that looks like you, Brian. It's just true.
Absolutely agree with that. And that's something we've talked about in previous episodes too, is, who you send in to manipulate that situation can make a difference too. So be aware of that.
I hate that word, but yes, that's because as a compliance and security officer, right? Occasionally I'm the one who's doing the social engineering on the inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one who's occasionally internally testing call centers or customer service folks. And again, that's called penetration testing in our space, but it's also just called social engineering. And ideally you wear, what did Bharat say on his episode? Shoot, I need to remember. I really liked how he said it. It was like researchers versus, it was defenders, I think, versus researchers. What was the term?
And I hate to do it, but you're going to have to come back for the part 2 of the rest of this episode for incognito mode and how to readjust your privacy settings for next week. Brandon and I, honestly, we just conveniently went over, so we're going to stop it there, and we're going to hope that y'all tune in next week. Reach out to us if you want to socialize with us.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Socializing Security. We hope you learned a thing or two with us.
If you'd like to continue socializing with us on this topic or have feedback, we'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn or social media. Just search for Socializing Security. Or you can email us at info@socializingsecurity.com.
Until next time, stay social and stay secure.